I want to talk to you about a lot of things, but the thing that I really want to make sure we focus on in this conversation is this idea that you kind of hear in the personal empowerment world and in the spiritual world, this idea of ascension. And it's something very unique that's happening now, or really over the past couple of years. And we're all going through it, but most of us don't know it. So,
Very true.
so
Yes.
let's just start there. What the hell is ascension?
Well, I'd like to take it from a personal point of view and the bigger point of view,
Yeah.
because you know that the phrase, the time has come. So we are part of a greater system, the planetary system, the galactic system, the consciousness, living consciousness of all that exists. And the Earth has moved into a new position in the galaxy. It's aligned with the center of the galaxy, which creates a different channel and a different frequency for the Earth to be aligned to. So the Earth is a living being,
Yeah.
and we live on the Earth. And so we actually, that little wagon that's taking us by Mother Earth is guiding us in this little wagon. We go wherever she goes.
Yeah.
And so there really are different vibrations, a different frequency level coming into the planet, which means that it's affecting the planetary consciousness. And these movements in the galactic sphere have been tracked for millions of years by indigenous people.
How did they track them? What did they do to track them?
It's very interesting because we assume that that they were in the same consciousness we were,
Yeah.
but they weren't. And the earth has gone through many different cycles where the consciousness of human beings has been extremely elevated.
Mhm.
And when you have some glimpses of transcendent experiences, you realize that your senses are can be so magnified. I've even had an experience where staring at the stars, my higher sense popped in and I was able to see into Saturn,
Wow.
like as if it was right here. You know what I mean? Like just right around me, I could see it. And so I assume, I don't know this for sure, but based on my own experience, I assume there have been times when human beings have had the ability to perceive things that are far more expanded than we've been able to see.
Yeah.
Now, if we were just limited to our own observation ability in the 3D world, we might take millions of years to see and track all of the galactic movement. You can see how you are when you're in a quiet place in nature. You're much more aware, and you also feel like you're communing or communicate in communication with the nature around you.
Yeah.
So this is what's happening to everyone in their consciousness now. Um, when when these new frequencies, like you say, we are being entrained to new frequencies. And these have also been recorded in the Vedic literature, which is some of the oldest literature, spiritual literature on the planet. They can delineate 5 levels of the senses.
Mhm.
And the level that we're working at right now, 3D, is the most limited level. So we happen to be going through one of the darkest periods in the cycle of the yugas. Maybe you've heard of that term.
I
That's what
haven't.
the
What are the
the,
yugas?
the yugas, yugas, and those are cycles of time that incorporate hundreds of thousands of years. And they've tracked this, and it's in the Vedic literature. And picture a clock
Mhm.
where the lowest frequency period is the Kali Yuga, and that might go from about 4:30 to 7:30 on the clock. It's at the bottom, and we are starting to rise, like get to be around 7:15.
Okay.
and starting this upward ascension that takes us into the next cycle, and then and then there's a top cycle. So we are moving as a planet, as a humanitarian consciousness, into this next cycle of frequency that is predicted and known about. And so we are living at a time for the last couple thousand years, because these cycles last a long time, where it's been very dark. I mean, you can just look at our
Turn
history.
on the news and look at our
Right,
history books, right?
right. And so we are being carried along. And since we're coming from a dark period, moving towards a light period, it feels like something new is happening. It's like, oh, it's like my eyes have adjusted to the dark. I can see things around me that I couldn't see before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to think of myself and my fellow beings in a new way. So, in the
I mean, that's
simplest,
happening now. That
right,
has not been the case
right,
historically,
exactly,
right? But as we move into 6:37:15 on the clock,
right.
right, we are starting. It's like a veil has been lifted.
So we're adjusting to these different frequencies, like a different dial on the TV or the radio. And as that's happening, like you said, we're seeing things in our relationships, in our work, in ourselves. And we have to be careful not to criticize ourselves for not having seen those things
Yeah,
before, because they're being revealed now.
yeah, revealed.
And we don't like change very much. And so when these new frequencies come in, unless you're very excited about every new idea and insight that you get, which I am actually, it's hard to take. So when you realize you're in a relationship that hasn't been serving you or the other person, because it's always about two, then you have to figure out how to navigate in the context of the unknown.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns.
A lot of unknowns, because we are in an emergent state. And so, whatever starts happening to us, we don't have any framework to place it on.
Mm-hmm.
So, things can discombobulate really fast when you don't have a framework or a container to put it into context. So, from the physical body, I mean, that's the most dense part of us, and
Right.
that is the part that has the hardest adjustment to make. So, you can go from developing allergies to having aches and pains that suddenly appear, and all kinds of unknown symptoms that are really psycho spiritual symptoms.
What do you mean exactly when you say, and we're going to get into your medical intuitive work because I'm fascinated by that, but what do you mean when you say that they are psychospiritual symptoms?
So, uh, so we can have this new frequency change, and like you said, I've had every single one of those symptoms that you've described and
Including
more.
the achy toes, my big toe
Yes, my
hurts
big toes
so
have been
badly.
weird. They have just recently. They've been
Yeah,
weird.
I don't know what the hell.
So I kind of look at it at many levels. The first level I actually look at it is in the meridian system,
Mhm.
for the acupuncture meridians. And
Those are
what's happened,
energy lines that run through your
right,
body. Yes.
right. I'm a big advocate of acupuncture
Yeah.
for helping suppress some of these symptoms or clear them through,
That's a good
because some
point.
of them
I
you
haven't
just
tried
can't
that.
get. Oh, you haven't?
I mean, I've tried acupuncture in the past, but not for what
Oh,
I'm experiencing now. Yeah.
okay. Yes, it can be very helpful. So what happens is, energy builds up in different places, and since we've lived in a fairly toxic world, no matter how pure you live or how your diet is, as these new light frequencies, higher intelligence starts coming into your body has to become more refined, and it has to release and figure out how to let these new frequencies move through. And so what it'll do, it'll create some detox situations. It it can be these very strange pains and aches and everything that you're describing, and they're very much related to the acupuncture meridians.
Hmm.
So the big toe has to do with the heart. Um,
That's funny.
okay. So so when we can get some support that way, it can help alleviate the symptoms. Other times we have to go through meeting the symptoms. And what I mean by that is we need to go inside, really become aware of our physical consciousness. So it's not just the body and our breath, but there's a whole consciousness that we are involved in this physical world. And we can have a conversation with these symptoms. And it's like having a conversation with your best friend or, an intuitive. And these symptoms can speak to you and help guide you. And very often, when you get the message, the symptom will move through. We only know a sliver of who we are and what we're capable of. And in the human spectrum, we can't forget that we are connected to this greater cycle of living energy.
Mhm.
So there is a momentum towards life in the dimension that we are existing in. And so it is always towards more blossoming, more expression, more understanding. It's not something that's a negative entropy, which we've
Right.
been told that it is. It's not. The thrust of the universe is towards life. And so we are being thrust into greater understanding of who we are as human beings. If we were born in some other star system in some other universe, we would not look like this and we would be on some other different journey. But this human constellation of being is so amazing. And coming from the darkness that we've been coming from,
Right.
what we're waking up to is huge. So, again, coming from the dark to the light, we don't know what's happening, it's unknown. And so I was 19 when I connected with Mother Earth in a very deep way. And we always need something
Mhm.
to help us feel safe, always. And you've discussed this on your podcast over and over again. And we always need a container. We need something that holds us while we go through all these changes. When you transcend 3D, you're transcending polarity consciousness.
Mm,
And
that's
so you're moving into an integrated whole state. So, right now, from 3D consciousness, when we talk about chakras,
huh.
okay, those are the energy centers that are along the spine and have different levels of consciousness in them. And so we talk about them as if they're separate. Like I'm in my heart chakra now, or I'm in my root chakra now, or I'm in my third or fourth or 10th. We look at them and our language reflects a separate sense of each chakra.
Mhm.
From 4D, when we're starting to move into our heart, we're starting to understand this is a system. And just like
Okay.
system theory or family theory, you can't look at one piece of it without
Oh,
understanding the whole
okay.
system.
Okay. I like this. I like this.
Okay?
All right.
Okay. And the heart has a lot to do with seeing things in an integrated way.
Yeah.
Okay? So we're in this individuated consciousness. The heart, you can kind of pulse the heart a little bit, start to expand a little bit, and then go, oh, you know what? As I feel my heart, I'm starting to feel a little more whole, a little more depth in my breath. My body's starting to relax. I'm starting to feel like a whole flow through me. And then we go through another shift, and it's very similar, like shifting into sleep. It's a more subtle consciousness, but we leave the world of comparison and conflict and polarity behind, and we become a wholeness. And this wholeness has a different intelligence in it. And we absolutely substantially wake up a new consciousness within us. And each person, since this is all part of the emergent experience we're all going through now, will start to have glimpses of this. And it feels so good that
Yeah.
it entices people to learn about it. So, some of the language in our 3D world has to do with flow states,
Yes.
right?
And in
That
5D, you're uber flow.
Right, exactly. And when you're in the flow, people love being in the flow.
Yeah, that's a good example of being in 5D when you're really in
Mm-hmm.
flow and you lose track of time and you're doing something in your genius and you're feeling all yummy. Like that's a moment of non polarity, right? Would
Right,
you say? Would
right.
that be a,
Yes. In thousands of years of time, when people knew there was going to be a transition from one age to the next, from one frequency to the next, they did a tremendous amount of ceremony.
Hmm.
They prepared the people. People were aware that we go through these cycles as human beings.
Right? And let them know what to expect.
Right, but
Yeah.
not only that, that the ceremony helped align the collective consciousness
Mm.
of humanity where it was at with what was coming.
We need a ceremony.
Yes, we need lots of ceremonies.
Yeah.
And we're kind of 4,000 years behind in our ceremonies.
Right.
Okay.
Are. We're not good at
So,
ceremonies.
because we were in this very dark period.
Yeah.
And so we lost that type of wisdom. So, as we're going through this ascension process, we are going through it in the most bare bones,
Mm.
dramatic, in your face way that it can happen with the least amount of support, with the least amount of wisdom available. And here we are, like, let out of the gate with the darkest part of us having, a play date with the
Right.
world.
Right.
And
Happening.
so from the bigger picture, that's how I see it.
The
Okay.
darkest part of us having a play date with the world. That's a good way of describing it.
We were designed to be divine from within. And the place where that starts is in the root chakra. And as the world got darker and darker and darker, we were enticed, programmed away from the body,
Yeah.
the miracle of the body, all those beautiful women that were holding ceremonies in the forest. And we were dissociated from the most powerful, beautiful divinity within us possible. We were allowed to go to our hearts, but we were not allowed to go to the root chakra. And people started
Where the
living.
sexual center is.
Right, right.
Uh,
And so we became a disembodied species.
what else would you say is really kind of practices or strategies that can be really helpful during this time of energetic transition and upheaval?
So anything that reconnects us to the body consciousness. So you have to distinguish between coming back to the self loathing, disempowered body that you think you have, and you have to discover, be led into, or exposed to the consciousness that is beautiful about you. And, I think everyone should listen to your podcast on self love. I mean, it was a beautiful exposition on that. But what happens is when we ask people to come back to the body and become embodied, they come back to the person they hate the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah.
And you have to be guided through,
Good point.
which is what you discussed. you have to be guided to find the part of you that is beautiful, loving, and like can rejoin with
Yeah.
your body. To
And
me, the easiest way for me to come back is to feel the energy of the earth on my feet. And I go through a type of grounding process that's a very expansive grounding process. So, first I check that I actually can feel 2 feet, 2 knees, 2 hips, 2 breasts, 2 shoulders, and a head to just make sure I'm all here
mhm, we're
because
all here. Yeah.
we're all here. And then I start lowering into my body with a felt sense so that I can feel my seat on the chair.
Mhm.
And a lot of women stop right there
Yeah.
because when you can feel your seat and you feel it sinking and spreading because it's
It's
relaxing,
spreading. Yeah.
spreading. Oh my God. There, that's where this programming stops us. But what happens then is the root chakra starts to be able to open.
Mhm.
And, sex is one aspect of the root chakra, but the root chakra is the foundation of our being and where that divine energy exists. And so I work with actually softening the tailbone and softening that whole hip area, become very embodied in the hip and the thighs and the lower back, and allow myself to come in there. And when I do that, it's a very enjoyable feeling if I can get beyond that self
That
criticism,
criticism.
which does stop a lot of women. So it is helpful, to have someone guide you there. The other problem with that is the 50% of all women who have been abused. And so we have left that aspect of our body. We have disembodied from there. And to become whole, we have to be helped, mentored, guided to re inhabit and re empower, take our power back to the
Yeah.
point where we can be in our bodies.
You're,
One thing that I see, and I'm seeing many people mention this in this ascension process, there is an awakening of the power of collective consciousness and group interaction that is healthy compared to where we're coming from. I mean, we only knew what we knew within a certain context, but what's awakening now is one, and this has to do with the ascension process. We have looked at our higher being as higher. It's
yeah.
up there somewhere,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And what's happening now is the higher being is incorporating into our daily being.
Mhm.
And so instead of being somewhere far off that we have to reach and seek for, this new awareness is about this higher frequency aspect of ourselves embodying in the current self, and which is what's causing a lot of the havoc in our being.
Ah, so it's not just adjusting to the Earth's frequency, it's integration of the higher self and the physical self.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Okay.
All right.
So we now have access because of the ascension process and the frequencies to incorporating, embodying this higher being. And I see it everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
in the last couple months, it's even everywhere now. And people don't even know it, but it happens on a subtle level, even when people aren't aware of it.
Right.
So
And
it's
you're
happening.
going through it whether you know it or not.
Right,
It's happening to
exactly,
every single one of
exactly.
us.
I see that we go through trends of disturbances
Mhm.
as we're adjusting. Sometimes it's about getting sick, sometimes it's breaking a toe or, being accident prone. Sometimes it has to do with changing frequency at our job or in a relationship or with our body. We go through different areas where it seems to
Upheaval.
hit.
Yes.
Right, right. And so it depends on where you are with that, where it's going to hit.
Yeah. But it's
But
going
like
to
I
hit.
said, right. But if we
Right.
can, if we can do these group ceremonies, we can help move this stuff through more smoothly. I'm not saying that I haven't hit every single bump there is. I have. Absolutely.
Oh,
I
me
mean,
too.
I love this. There was a, a robot convention in Japan,
Mhm.
and they had a prize for the robot that could go through the maze the quickest, the most intelligent robot. Well, the one that won was the one that bounced off the walls and accidentally got through the openings. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at my life. I just like bounce off walls, and then all of a sudden an opening appears and I'm thrust
Oh,
into
there it
it.
is.